Welcome, welcome to this place. Here we search for truth and understanding. Here we celebrate life and we contemplate its mysteries. Here we share healing and wholeness. So whoever you are, wherever you come from, whomever you love, we welcome you to this congregation.
We kindle this flame with love for mothers and foremothers past, present, and future. We kindle this flame in celebration of community and its generations. We kindle this flame with respect and support for the greater circle of life which we are part of.
This is the Circle of Care by Lisa Bovey Kemper. In religious community, we share our joys and our triumphs, our sorrows and our broken places. In this circle of care, we make space for the complexity of life, the myriad experiences that bless and break our hearts. The truth of human experiences dictates that on any given day, we each come to the table with hearts in different places. It's especially so on this day, invented to honor women who nurture. In this circle of care, we honor the truth that is mothering is not and never will be quantified in one single descriptor. Mothering can be exclusive or infuriating, fulfilling or confusing, commonplace or triumphant. It exists in the everyday experiences of each person. There is no human being that is not connected to or disconnected from a mother. And so we honor the complexity of experiences writ in large and flowered platitudes, but here in this place, laid bare, honoring the truth in each of our hearts, there is room for all in this circle. If you have carried a child or children, whether or not they came to be born, we see you. If you have fervently wished to do so, and circumstances of fate made it impossible, we see you. If you love children we cannot see, whether because of death or estrangement, we see you. If you never wanted to be a mother, we see you. If you are happy to be a mother, to mother other people's children, as an educator, an auntie, or a foster parent, we see you. If your mother hurt you physically or emotionally, we see you. If you had no mother at all, we see you. If your mother is or was your best friend, we see you. If your gender says you are not a mother, and yet you can take on the role of a nurturer, we see you. If you wonder whether mothering has been enough, we see you. And if yours is a difficult truth altogether, we honor your unspoken story. There's room for all in this circle. May it be so today and always.
Well, over the past year, while we've been in lockdown, I've spent more time at home with my daughters. Occasionally, I will tell them stories about my childhood, about growing up in the late 1970s. It often starts with me saying something like, you kids, you have it so easy these days. Back in my day, yeah, it was that type of story. They often laugh hearing about how parents were so hands-off back then, how I would walk home from school alone in kindergarten, how my sister and I in the summer would leave home after breakfast to go out and play in the neighborhood, not come back home until dark when we were finally hungry. Or how the other 6-year-old neighborhood boys and I would ride our dirt bikes into the woods and play pirate for hours, building booby traps, shooting BB guns, and swashbuckling any scallywags who would dare cross us. When I tell these fond memories of my childhood to my daughters, they look at me. They're confused. They look at my childhood as some episode out of Lord of the Flies, where, there were no parents around and we did whatever we wanted, whenever we wanted. Sounds dangerous, they say. Well, of course, like all of us, we tend to look back on our formative years with nostalgic rose-colored glasses. Because, back then we were free to play, we were free to learn and create without all of those burdens that come with adulthood. But, having to pay the bills, make sure there's enough food on the table and that the boiler is working when the house gets cold, these things tend to become our focus as we get older. So yes, maybe I am remembering all of the fun things of my childhood and selectively omitting all of the struggles. But there were many, many wonderful times back then in that Humboldt neighborhood outside of Hartford, Connecticut in the late 70s. I remember that blizzard of 78 when the entire backyard shared by the entire block was covered in ice and snow, when all of our back steps had turned into some icy slide and we struggled to scamper up to get back into our house. There were also those countless hours during those long summer days when all of the neighborhood kids would play a game called Spy, a game that went on all day long. Basically, to play Spy, you would break into teams in the early morning, and the entire point of the game was for your team to hide around the neighborhood and attempt to spy on the other team. If you saw the other team, then you would run out and you'd say, "We saw you," and I guess your team would win or something. Anyhow, it was an amazing game. We played it pretty much all summer. Well, I remember one lazy afternoon when my team was sitting on a hill looking for another team. And one of the older boys convinced me that he saw in a comic book an ad for special binoculars, and these binoculars could see through buildings. We were amazed. Those would be perfect, right? We would win Spy every single time if we had those. Well, I remember rushing home and asking my mom to order me some. Sadly, they never came. The neighborhood where I grew up had these long row houses, all attached to one another. I remember when my next door neighbor and I begged our parents to cut through the basement walls so that our basements would become connected, so that we could have a perfect escape and run into the other house to escape the team trying to spy on us. Or there was a time when we demanded that our dads cut fireman holes in our bedroom floor so that we could slide down the fire pole into our kitchen. Again, great for a quick getaway. Or, and I'll tell you, this was the coolest idea yet. My friends and I convinced our parents to dig tunnels through the basement wall, going about 50 feet through the dirt with a hatch that would pop up in the middle of the backyard. I mean, that would be epic. Sure, my dad said, I'll get right on it. Yes, confirmation. He said he's going to do it. I guess my 5-year-old self didn't quite understand sarcasm yet. You know, those days where fantasy and reality all blurred into one, they were pure magic. You know, we were given so much freedom to explore the neighborhood, to create games, to laugh, to get into arguments, and to figure out amongst ourselves how to solve our problems. Some days I wonder if my daughters are missing out on an important part of their developments, since today parenting tends to be much more cautious, careful, and even sometimes a bit controlling. My daughters often laugh of hearing these old stories, wondering how we made it out alive, how we lived long enough to tell the tale. But you know, as I've gotten older and I've had more conversations with my parents, you know, those days were not the free-for-all that I remember them as. See, my parents knew all of the other parents in the neighborhood. And all of the parents called all of the other parents when they saw that roving mass of children come flying through their homes. Don't worry, Mrs. Egan. I just saw David and the boys ride by on their bikes. Then they came inside and I gave them all a sandwich. Not to worry, everything's okay. I mean, if there was an argument or a problem, any of the neighbor moms thought nothing of disciplining all of us. And then we'd hear about it when we got back home. And we kids thought we were the ones playing spy. It turns out there was this network of master mother spies watching our every move. Well, on those days as the sun got low in the sky, eventually we would make it home, where a plate of pork chops, mashed potatoes, and peas would be waiting on our dinner table. Our parents would ask us about all of the adventures we got into. My sister and I would exchange mischievous glances across the table, snickering. If only they knew. Turns out they knew all along. They were making sure we stayed safe while we were, yes, given the freedom to play pirate, to skin a knee, to get our shirts muddy, to romp and to stomp. We had the times of our lives together. So for all of that, I thank you, Mom and Dad. Thanks for the freedom. Thanks for your love. Thanks for caring. So may it be. Amen.